No sighing.
There's no sighing in baseball.
Well, we're not playing baseball, are we?
Huh.
Are you recording?
We've been recording.
Are we live?
Are we live? Yes, we're live. Happy Barbenheimer Day to all those who observe.
God.
I hear that Ben Shapiro's not happy with Barbie because if you couldn't see the screen, you'd be upset too.
You're an ass.
That's why you do a show with me.
No, that's why I love you. I do a show with you because you are intelligent and semi-funny.
My Japanese gardener comment flopped earlier. I need to workshop that one. I've got a loose 10 but a tight 5.
You don't have a tight anything.
So, pull up your topics. Let's go.
I don't have topics to pull up. I have things that I'd like to discuss, but...
Is the Supreme Court done for this year?
No,
Are
it
they
is.
done for autumn, winter?
Yeah,
season?
it is.
Oh.
It is. They
killed affirmative action. That was it.
I believe they have started, if not completed, a listing or putting out announcing the cases that they will be taking in the next term. I forgot what that process was called.
The docket.
Yeah, but there's like a Latinate term for it. But anyway, so I think they just finished deciding what cases they will hear next term. I don't think there's any big ones that are of incredible note. I'm sure other things will come up because they had the emergency docket where if things come up they push it forward sometimes.
I read something that apparently, and who knows how true this is. Apparently, Senate Democrats voted against a further investigation into who leaked the Dobbs Roe v. Wade decision. I can't corroborate, but I was reading something on Twitter about that. In which case, it seems like, is everyone just going to, drop this? That was a big deal at the time that the Supreme Court, which famously does not leak, they're like the Depends XL. They're the ones that are
Why did I heard you say it before you said it. And I'm so upset about that because I know you far too well. This needs to...
Well, they talk about...
This is our last episode, folks.
You can't pack it on 71. So... You're not Nixon. So, they say, piercing the veil. Okay, piercing the mattress protector of the Supreme Court. Someone leaked in advance the decision, including text of potential opinions, which I don't think were substantively changed upon release. So, apparently nobody's interested in figuring out who this was. Or if it's a staff member, maybe they've been appropriately sent down the river.
Well,
or was it a member of the Supreme Court?
You are big in your conspiracy theories and all this,
I'm not. I just want to know who leaked it.
But I think that's the issue is we'll never find out because there were too many possibilities. Previously, before COVID, things were very lock and keyed, very tight.
Documents not being able to leave a room physically.
Right, with regard to who saw what and when and how. Because of COVID and people having to work from home and staffers having to work from home and clerks is the proper term, having to work from home, they then started allowing, computers, laptops with these documents or hard drives, portable hard drives with these documents on them to be brought home. That never happened before.
Well, no,
and now it started happening for a couple of years. I think after the leak, they might have
back against it. I don't think that physical hard drives were allowed to be brought home. I think it was
that's what Sarah Isgur said.
Physical. I thought it was a secured login link, and then you see it there, but you cannot download it, you cannot print it, you cannot whatever.
No, because some of these clerks had to, because they were only allowed a certain number of hours within the chambers because of COVID and restrictions and all that shit.
They just whipped out flash drives and took it home?
They had to take it home because they had to work at home on some of the stuff that they previously were not allowed to. And so it could have really been a lot of different people who had access to these documents. Because as I understand how it works, with the opinions being written, the majority opinion is pinned first. It is then circulated, and that allows the dissenting opinions or the dissenting justices to say, we disagree with these things that they have brought up, and here's why.
Put on your Perry Mason hat. Or your Perry Abbasi hat. Put on your Perry Mason hat. If the majority opinion is written first, which means that part is done, and from what I understand from the leak, I believe there was beyond the majority opinion, there were also concurrent or dissenting opinions included. So it was after the point of distribution of that particular opinion, which means you have 9 justices, staff members, let's say 5 people on each staff saw it. So 45 people you interview. You interview everybody. You can't trace it back. But that's at least enough people to fit into one classroom who could have potentially had access to it. Notwithstanding network administrators, but...
Now you're making me go back. But we had 3 opinions for this one, correct?
Right.
We had the majority opinion, which was written by... Was it...
It was Roberts, wasn't it? Or was it Alito?
I think it was Alito. And then a concurring opinion written by Thomas, because that's the one that everyone was in a tizzy about, or all the gay activists were in a tizzy about. And then I think Sotomayor or Kagan, one or the other, wrote the dissenting opinion. So I think we had 3 total for that major decision. So yeah, I'm assuming the majority opinion, as usual, was written first.
Okay. Released a draft of a majority opinion on May 2nd, 2022. Politico released a draft of a majority opinion by Justice Samuel Alito, circulated among the justices, so all of them, in February 2022.
Right, that's how it goes. And then you're allowed to...
It was Alito's draft.
So what I said it again, not consenting. What's the word? Concurring opinions are the ones that we agree mostly or either we agree mostly or in part, and we would like to make some other stipulation, or I agree fully, but I would like to also add this that I feel the other justice did not include.
So in this, sources told Politico that Justices Thomas, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett had voted in conference with Alito in December, and their positions had remained unchanged as of May 2022. But I'm sorry, I misspoke. No other drafts in concurrence or dissent had been circulated.
Right. That makes sense.
The Supreme Court confirmed the draft's authenticity the next day. Roberts said the leak is appalling. Thomas said the court should not be bullied.
But I'm going to go back to...
outside of justices' homes. So...
I'm going to go back to the issue of there technically was political motive for either side to leak it, and there technically was opportunity for either side to leak it and for lots of different people to have leaked it. So I really think they've just given up and don't want to spend any more money trying to find out something that they don't think that they can actually find out.
Well, here's what happened. So Roberts directed the marshal of the court, Gail Curley, to investigate. Law clerks were asked to provide private cell phone records and sign affidavits, to the point where some law clerks considered hiring personal counsel. In January 2023, they announced that the investigation could not determine the person responsible. Here's where it takes a turn. The court released a 20-page summary of its investigation. Michael Chertoff, a former judge and former Secretary of Department of Homeland Security under Bush, reviewed the report and found it thorough. The report and Chertoff's endorsement did not note that Chertoff's firm, the Chertoff Group, had been paid almost $1 million over the preceding 5 years to conduct security assessments for the court. So the person in charge of signing off of...
They didn't want to look bad.
But they hired the person who was a former Secretary of DHS, Chertoff, who was terrible, under Bush, in the last part of his administration. Post 9/11, by the way. then comes on and is providing, quote, security for the Supreme Court. Let this get leaked, and then he was in charge of signing off on the investigation for it? Why? Why would you not hire an outside firm like PricewaterhouseCoopers or one of these other things that does like the Oscar envelopes? Like, they'll find that shit in 5 minutes. Give it 3 gays, iced coffee, and,
Withhold their prep.
Exactly, and they'll find it out by Friday.
I don't know.
91 people had access.
You don't need to black pill me anymore. I don't believe in or
I'm
trust.
not black pilling.
No, I know, but I don't believe or trust in hardly anything that comes out of Washington, D.C.
I just want to
because no, you bring up valid points because too many times have we seen, and it doesn't go widely reported, that whoever conducts some investigation for whatever is going on is often in bed with or in cahoots with some other interest in burying the story, right? So the same thing happened with the HRC guy.
Right.
The Alfonso David, or David, I don't know how you pronounce his name.
Did he step down?
No, he was fired. And he is in the process of suing them for firing him for racial reasons or whatever. But no, the point I was trying to make is there was something hinky going on with investigations within the HRC. And so if David or David were smart, he would use that to his advantage. Basically, HRC was using a legal team that was also a donor to them or something like that. There was some conflict of interest in there, but no one actually, paid attention. So this shit happens all the time, especially in DC and within these political organizations. It's very hard to find, I imagine, some legal group that is not in cahoots with some side of an issue, right?
But that
there's
I don't
too much bedfellows.
But here's what I don't understand. Okay. That's actually a very good point. I, as someone, have reached out to counsel regarding a case involving a business of which I was formerly a part of.
What did you do?
Well, not this time. This wasn't something I did. It was investigating the terms of a contract. Embezzle?
Sorry.
I love the thing. But what money did you embezzle?
Tell them what you're referring to.
Black China. Okay. There was a show called...
sorry, everyone.
There was a Black China reality show. And if you don't know who Black China is, look up Amanda Bynes with the cheek piercings. Black China is the reason that Tokyo Toni, a former stripper, and Kris Jenner share a grandchild as both the child's grandmothers. But Black China had a reality show called like The Real Black China, and it was on Zeus TV, which is a black entertainment network. They have an office in Valley Village.
Oh God!
Right across from Mariette Sea over on Riverside, and the show is fantastic because she rented a house in the Valley. And it was just like, what does this former stripper who's also going out with Rob Kardashian do all day? And apparently it's fight violently with her mother. And also her staff. So one of her staff members says, remember that time you told me to fill out that paperwork and then so that you could embezzle money? And so Black China is like 4'11". And you see her with the extensions and the lip and the cheek piercings and she's like, embezzle? What money did I ask you to embezzle? And she's chasing her through the house. This woman's trying to leave. I'm like, embezzle? I done heard it all. What money did you embezzle? So that's where that came from.
And I've seen this clip 8 million times because I'm friends with him.
But there's so many clips from the first couple episodes of that show, like the one where where her mother's like, I'm about to rock your world. ASAP. And so Black China turns around and she says, so rock it. And so that's been a clip for things.
But anytime that you reference
Embezzle.
business dealings,
Embezzle.
I ask, what did you embezzle? Or I think to ask.
Yes. So
Anyway.
she fought with her mother. They had like security guards. It was a great show. Anyway.
You sought counsel for some reason.
Speaking of conflicts of interest.
Okay.
I sought the opinion of counsel regarding the details of a contract from over 5 years ago
Okay.
that was signed. The counsel got back to me within a week and said, "Look, I've heard everything. I would love to investigate this further. Unfortunately, I previously was counsel in a different state for this company, and therefore it's a conflict of interest, and I cannot be involved, but I can refer you to an appropriate person," which is what an ethical person does.
Yes.
This is for a small business contract.
Right.
This is not for the Supreme Court of the United States. So if someone is that on their shit for something involving, a small contract, but someone's paying attention to that, but they're not paying attention to something as severe as a government leak on the level of the Pentagon Papers.
So I think the issue is we get to a point where it's a slippery slope. All of these conflict of interest stories that have come out recently dealing with the justices themselves, and both sides, left and right, saying, "Oh, this justice should have recused him or herself for this reason." Mm-hmm. You're going so far into the weeds into some of this, and because everyone is involved with everything to some degree, there will always be some connection somewhere where you can say, "Oh, that's a conflict of interest."
Right, it can get crazy, but with this, you have the security firm that was contracted to be in charge of Supreme Court security signing off on the Supreme
Right.
Court security
But this
case.
is what I mean. It's a slippery slope. If you start, with the big stuff, it trickles down to the small stuff. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
But if they're paying more attention to the small stuff, why is the big stuff ignored?
Overlooked?
Yeah.
I don't. But
Why is, again, PricewaterhouseCoopers keeps the Oscars envelope secure up until when Warren Beatty read the wrong name and the Moonlight La La Land Oscar. But they did a good job for a few decades. Why don't you let PricewaterhouseCoopers investigate and go from there?
because we're talking government versus for-profit companies. The for-profit companies are going to cover their asses every step of the way. The government, at every given level, there is people there are people who are incompetent. I was going to say there is incompetence. There are people who are incompetent or just don't give a fuck. Or both. So I don't. This is the biggest. I don't want to say gripe. This is the biggest problem I have with anything government related, is that
I think
no
that
one
this is where your true libertarian streak.
no,
comes
you're
out.
absolutely right. No one cares for the way the government runs because they have no skin in the game. They're just like, well, I'm going to get paid either way. I'm going to have my job either way.
That's why I'm going to pivot it in the direction of the primary candidacies. I think that both Trump and DeSantis have made very smart statements about how they will deal with the civil service. What jobs can you replace if they do not do their job? Or what jobs do answer to the executive branch? And that's a question that we should be asking regarding who's actually occupying the government. So you can write all the executive orders you want, pass all the laws you want. Who implements those? And so both of them, I feel like, have come up with at least some kind of approach for how to deal with that. I mean, Politico and similar organizations write scary articles about, like, oh, Trump is going to replace the entire civil service and everything like that. But
Because
you
we
can't
have
drain the swamp unless you, trim the reeds, too.
I'm sorry to do this, but we always revert back to this one talking point, but it's it is the absolute truth. You have discussions like this currently about executive branch overreach and overstep because they're having to find ways to actually accomplish things because Congress will not.
Right.
99% of the executive orders have been written in the last, let's say, I'll be conservative, 12 years.
Right.
Because Congress would not act or could not act fast enough.
Which is
So
why
the executive branch, right? So the executive branch says, "Fine, I'll make a decision for you. I'll write this," and they'll fight it in court later if they want to or if they need to, which always happens. So we have the executive branch versus the judicial branch constantly fighting with each other, and Congress is going, "I'm just getting a paycheck.
Right.
I'm just here for the party." They don't actually do anything. And if we made them do things, which is what the Supreme Court is really doing right now, because
they pushed back a few times saying basically this should be a legislative branch discussion.
Almost every time this particular past session, 85% of the decisions were like, no, you can't do that. This is something Congress has to do. Congress, do your job. Like, it happens over and over and over again, but Congress isn't doing anything. And how do we make them do something? Where the government doesn't work. We've gotten to a point where they figured out the loopholes. They figured out how to make everything so cushy for themselves that the entire workings of the government that were made in 1776, they found the ways to make it not work.
See, this is why I think for any primary candidate on either side running for president this time, you can ask a very simple question. Does the government get your Social Security checks in on time? Do they pay your medical bills for Medicare and Medi-Cal or whatever, senior medical care?
Medicaid, Medicare,
yeah.
Medicaid, yeah.
Because it's Medi-Cal here, but Medicaid
right.
in general. What is the government doing for you? That's a majority message. That's one that at least 80% of voters would be responsive to. Is the government working for you? The government in the past 3 years has done two things for you. They gave you one $1,200 check, and they sent you free COVID tests if you request them through the mail. That's it. That's all they did. In the meantime, you're sitting in the VA, and you're not getting your health care. You're waiting on your Social Security check, which is sometimes delayed because of Juneteenth or their holidays.
Not only that, you've gotten, a $1,200 check, but the same, 2 bags of groceries that you bought 2 years ago, 3 years ago, are triple.
Yeah. Embezzle. The government is embezzle money from your pocket. What money did they embezzle? All of it.
Well, you actually brought up a good segue to my next topic, which is
a good segue. That was my first job doing segues.
RFK.
Yes,
Junior.
Nothing but respect for my president. Not the dad. The dad was kind of a piece of shit, but the son's good.
So, the hearings, were they yesterday? I'm getting my days. My
Thursday,
days have
yeah,
been so fast and furious. Yes. So
they're all about family.
I am sorry for those listening. I am sort of dating when we're recording this, but recently they had congressional hearings on censorship, and I don't think that they anticipated it going as heated or getting as heated as it did. But I watched a few clips circulating the internet, mostly Twitter, but a few YouTube clips as well. The one woman, the first one I watched was the one woman, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. The original reporter of the Hunter Biden laptop.
Emma Jo Roberts. I think she was in that.
It was a three name.
I think it was Emma Jo Roberts.
I don't remember her name, but the New York Post writer who first broke that story.
Yes.
She spoke to Congress about censorship, and I thought she gave a very thorough and thought-provoking and damaging, quite frankly, opening statement about what she went through. She said, I did my job well. I did my job in a way that I was taught to. I did my due diligence. I did my research. I made sure things were valid before I reported them. And then when I reported them, after making sure that they were valid, I was silenced and my stuff was taken down. And I was told that I was a Russian propagandist and all this stuff. And she's like, I was literally doing my job as I was trained to do it, and the government decided to demonize me. And this is not okay. It's basically what she was saying in her opening statement. It was very, I don't want to say powerful, but it was very kind of stirring. I'll let you respond to that before I jump into RFK Jr.
No, I think that's interesting and that's correct. And I think she's a different name. I used the wrong name. I think of Emma Roberts. But I want to be very clear about the Hunter Biden story. Hunter Biden was known as the sort of man about town, being his dad was Joe Biden. Lost his brother, lost his mother, lost, a lot of people in his life. Kind of fucked up, did some drugs, everything like this. Look, I wouldn't take as many pictures as he did doing coke with trannies, but that's just me. But seems to have kind of gotten his shit together. Yes, there's the unacknowledged child, but conservative media seems to be making a big deal out of that. I don't think that Hunter Biden...
Well, that's a different thing.
That's a different story.
We'll talk about that later.
I personally am not interested in the Hunter Biden story as a person. Let him do his art. Let him do his thing. Let him live in Venice and live his best life.
Correct. I agree with that.
My issue... And also, I think that his dad has done as much as he can with him. Like, you read the messages of, like, the text from Joe Biden to his son being like, I want the best for you. I feel like you're struggling. Like, what can I do? Like, you can tell that, like, Joe Biden is struggling with this fucking kid who's, like, an adult, well into his adulthood and not doing anything. Here's where it's a problem. They used Hunter, but more importantly, used Joe Biden's brother as conduits to have access to government officials during Obama's presidency and since. That's my problem.
Well, yeah.
Is that foreign governments and companies have paid the Biden family a lot of money for access to the government. Whether it was paid back or not is immaterial. If you want to talk about, violating the whatever act, that's where I ask questions. And it seems like nobody wants to have a substantive answer because there's a lot of money that went in a lot of directions, but they went basically to the Biden family, the 10% for the big guy and all that. Right. That's where I have a problem because that's where I think that undue influence was paid to the Bidens for all that. I don't give a fuck about his art. I don't care if he did drugs. I don't care what trannies he was with. But that's the problem.
But this is the problem with our country. Too many people are hung up and or interested. The media, both sides, knows what sells, knows what's going to, get clicks, knows what's going to make people go buy a newspaper at a bodega in New York City.
At a bodega. But did they get an iced cafecito and chop it up with everyone behind the register?
So they lead with... in 2020, the potential president's son, was found with drugs and with having sex and all that, like the salacious gossip.
Yeah. Like, drugs,
which,
sex.
every family has their shit.
There's
like that's
always
not
a shitty kid
Yes.
or sibling.
So that is not a big deal, and I would forgive someone that.
Right.
But that's what sells the papers. That's what gets the clicks. So that's what's being pushed. That's what's being sensationalized. What's being buried and ignored is their actual corruption,
Right.
which we should be worried about. And because they were lumped together in the same kind of reporting and story, we lost both to censorship for whatever reason.
Right.
So it's still a problem. It's still a big deal that someone was censored after being able to prove that, yes, I got this information. It's all true. It's all, above board. It's not propaganda. But again, they led with the sensational thing that's going to get the clicks, and they buried the really important shit, which
is why I don't think that
damaging to the
I don't think there's
campaign.
anything damaging with the Hunter Biden allegations, and this is why. I was listening to a podcast. One of his good friends is this comedian, Kate Quigley. They both live in Venice. They're neighbors. They've done coke together, everything like this. Kate Quigley was at an apartment, did some coke with some people. 3 people died because it was fentanyl laced. It was Hunter Biden's dealer. Whatever. They could have very easily done him in if they didn't want him to talk about whatever happened with the dealings and everything like this. They did not give him any information that could be useful. And by they, I mean whoever was trying to get influence on that family. It seemed like everybody was, but no one wants to talk about Joe Biden's brother. What's his name? I have to look him up. That was the real influence dealing in this family. And he was the one who was brokering the deals and brought in the son. Oh, James Biden. He's the one who did all of the problems with... Look.
He's the one making it bad for him. Oh, God, he looks just like
I know, they have the same hair, too. Look at where James Biden's money comes from, and you can find out where the real corruption was. But it was the same thing with Hillary Clinton and her 2 brothers. It was the same thing with Roger Clinton. It was the same thing with Carter's brother, who, by the way, talking about old people dying too soon, Tony Bennett. But still, Jimmy Carter lives on after, removing hospice care. That's where the real corruption lies, is in the usually the siblings of
Sorry,
these people.
I didn't want to step on your
No.
end of your sentence.
No, it's fine. No, it's usually the siblings.
It's because Jimmy Carter sold his soul to the devil as a politician. Tony Bennett sold his soul to Lady Gaga. She doesn't have as much pull as the devil.
All I'm saying is I'm so glad that Tony Bennett, this poor man, finally passed so she could not do Three Cheeks the Third or whatever fucking like second sequel. I'll never forget when I talk about my predictions coming true. When I said her next album, this was a few years ago, I think around 2020, maybe earlier, and I said, look, Gaga's out of ideas. Her next album is going to be like Two Cheeks, Too Furious or something like Cheek to Cheek with a number 2. And sure enough, she dragged Tony Bennett out on stage. He didn't know where he was or what he was doing. He was like, why does, he was looking at her like, why does Gina Lollobrigida have blonde hair now? And she's out there singing and dragging him out, and he, sings a few songs. They throw him back in his cage. And I'm just so glad he's spared from having to sing one more time. Because, let's be honest, if Amy Winehouse was still alive, there'd be no Lady Gaga-Tony Bennett collaboration. That was a real fucking singer.
And for anyone listening, if you want to go back into our archives and find the episode where he first made the joke about...
Two Cheeks, Too Furious, yes.
You get a special prize. I don't know what it'll be. You'll get a special prize.
I'm calling another bag of coffee. But yes. But no, getting back to this.
I want to get to RFK in a minute, but go ahead. Finish your thought, yes.
No one wants to investigate Biden's brother. That's the problem. Stop looking at Hunter. There's nothing there.
He's just a
Well, no,
fuck up.
there's a lot there, but not anything
There's nothing there that I really...
that's going to be damaging to him. Yes.
Yes, and I think that even if you look in the dealings and everything like that, he was not brokering those dealings. He was CC'd on those messages. Even the one where he's like, I want my father to know everything like that. The brother was facilitating it. Look at Joe Biden's brother and you will find out where the corruption lies. Anyway. Speaking of corrupt families, the Kennedys and their fantastic news.
Well, so it struck me, and I don't know if it was a publicity stunt for his campaign or not. I really doubt it, because he's not the type that... we've heard him talk a few times. He's not the type to do this. RFK Jr. got up in front of Congress, in front of the special hearing on censorship, to talk about his censorship, and he had apparently like a 5-minute opening statement prepared, like everyone does when they go in front of Congress, and he actually said, I had this statement prepared and I gave it to you. I'm not going to talk about it. I want to say this. And he went on for almost 10 minutes, which a lot of the Democrats were pushing back on the fact that he got more time. But he kind of respectfully ripped into the people who were saying, he's being anti-Semitic, he's being racist, he's being this, he's being that, and therefore we need to censor him.
I'm very upset with Jonathan Levine, who I thought was a, honest reporter with the New York Post, and that sounds like a contradiction in terms. But what he said, to an effect, what RFK said was, hey, look, these studies came out on COVID, and they found out that it affected people with Ashkenazi Jewish DNA and Han Chinese DNA in less of a quantity than other particular ethnicities. We also found out that both the governments of the United States and China have had concealed weapon or biological weapons programs that target ethnic background. There's a problem here, and basically no one wants to look into it, but this was a real problem. All he's doing is citing studies, and they made it sound like he said that basically that turned into COVID was like an evil Chinese Jewish bioweapon or something like that. Which, by the way, if you want to know a Chinese Jewish bioweapon, it's called the SATs. Like, let's be honest.
The thing that I appreciated with what he said is he was very nonpartisan in his opening statement, because he said, when I first started talking about this, the Trump administration censored me. Now the Biden administration is censoring me. My own party has called me all of these names and all of these horrible accusations that he said I resent. I've never been any of these things. I've never said
called him
any
anti-Semitic, racist, all that stuff.
Right. All of the tropes that they throw at everyone, and that they don't, that they want to shut up. But one of the things that he brought up in his opening statement that I thought was interesting, that I didn't realize, is that he was censored. So over the past couple of years, we've had misinformation and disinformation,
yes.
Right? He was censored for malinformation.
Oh.
And as he gave examples and defined it in his opening statement, is that malinformation is basically any point of view that someone has or publicly announces that goes against what the government thinks. So we are literally getting into like communist China territory, where the government says one thing, that is the absolute truth, and anyone who says something against what the government says is going to be censored because it's quote-unquote malinformation. And this new term has been coined not by the Trump administration, who censored him first, but that was for before these studies came out. mis or disinformation.
Well, he was an officer with RFK had a job in the Trump administration.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Trump appointed him to some board overlooking vaccines or something like that.
Oh, well, the point is, though, during the Biden administration, that's when he got censored for quote-unquote malinformation, being he did not toe the party line or the government line or the CDC line or whatever.
Oh, yes, he was the chair of a vaccine commission.
The fact that that distinction, malinformation, exists should be enough to make anyone very, very uncomfortable.
Because the government sets a tone, and if you don't follow the tone, then you are flagged, removed, in concert with major social media, platforms, so on and so forth.
Right, but that is literally getting into USSR, like Russia, Communist China, like these very dangerous regimes that we have
Governmentally controlled information.
Yes, but that's what they did, right? Like that was the beginning of absolute control. This should be alarm bells for anyone. And the fact that he got in front of Congress and said it on record, and the fact that after he said that, a lot of Democrats, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz, said,
Drip dry.
we need to close this hearing because what he's saying is dangerous, and put this behind closed doors so the American people don't hear it.
What is this, the Nuremberg trials? Like, what do you mean what he says is dangerous? I don't know why people are so fucking scared of Robert Kennedy. I really don't.
Especially the Democratic Party, because they've made the point he's not going to get the nomination. Like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. He's polling very low in the Democratic Party.
But
what are they
still the
so
runner-up.
fucking afraid of?
That's true.
What are they afraid of that he's going to say that's going... What are they trying to stop?
That's the part that concerns me, because if you have someone from a family like that, and you have members of their own... This is the sick part. Members of their own family weaponized, like Kerry and the rest of the shit-ass Kennedy kids. Weaponized to basically say, oh, we don't respect what our brother and our uncle says, and everything like that. And it's interesting because I think it was... I don't know if it was the Rogan or the Russell Brand interview. They asked him, like, well, how do you feel about your family command against you? He's like, look, I have 5 kids. As long as my kids support me after raising them, I did a good job. That's sad. That they have forced this man into a position where his own family has had to step out and denounce and everything like this. Like, look, the Kennedys have always been on the make and on the take. Like, they, chairs of everything like that, Caroline, the rest of them. But this man has everything to lose. He could have just said nothing. He could have been the kooky uncle at most. He could have been well loved and respected by everybody. He chose to speak out, and he chose to run for an office that I think that he would be very qualified to run. He's a successful attorney. He has a history doing all of this. I'm going to say, if Trump doesn't get the nomination, I'm going to say it now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has my vote. Right now, he's ahead of DeSantis in my own internal, polling.
Well, I'm going to do you one better, but let me ask you this question first. Because you might know better. You may not, but you might. I'm going to put you on the spot. The Kennedy family has a lot of money.
Yes.
I'm assuming he has a lot of money.
He's done very well, yeah.
Why are the Democrats saying, oh, he's only saying this controversial stuff in order to get campaign donations, and or he's only saying this to get money from the right in order to forward his campaign?
He doesn't need money. I think maybe they're saying he needs to meet the minimum donor threshold or number of donors.
I think
he's met it.
Yes, clearly. There's enough.
He's not Doug Burgum from
There's
South
enough
Dakota.
moderate people.
Yeah.
Middle of the road people who would support him or think that he's better than any right wing conservative version, that he's met that threshold. So they're demonizing him as wanting to get more campaign donations for the wrong reason. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the wrong reasons are they're mad that he has said, and this is why they're mad at him now. He's basically been the one family member to say, look, there's more about what happened to my dad that you don't know. There's more about what happened to my uncle that you don't know. And that has upset a lot of people. You know, Biden, like Trump towards the end, agreed to release the rest of the JFK files and didn't. There's over 12,000 redacted documents.
But
they have been upset about that, and that bothers people. I don't know who's still alive that bothers. I don't know what you have, like a 98-year-old Secret Service agent who missed JFK's limo. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I threw myself on the hood instead. Like, I don't know. I don't know who it still bothers.
To do you one better, though, and I tweeted this, so you way before we had this conversation, so you can go fact check me on this. If for some reason, by the grace of God, we have a RFK Jr. versus Trump, match, I'm voting for RFK Jr. I would vote for him over Trump. I would.
Many people are
at
saying
this point. At this point, I would.
Many people are saying it, but it's similar to Bernie.
For various reasons that I won't get into, but
it's similar to Bernie and to other people where I'm like, Trump has not had an even matchup. Hillary was not an even matchup. Biden was not an even matchup. You've not had an even match between two populist people on both sides fighting against each other for the presidency.
And quite frankly, two people who are probably the most toward the center.
Yes. To the point where they're like, they asked R. Kelly, why have you not, been more mean towards Trump? He's like, I'm not, what do I gain out of that? Like, I don't care. Like, some of his voters, I'd like to vote for me. I'm sure that he likes some of the people who voted for the left. Like, what do I gain from something like that?
A very last thing, and we'll wrap this up.
We've said too much.
I want to bring a little bit of culture into this because I was enthralled / shocked.
Don't act shocked.
That you have never heard of Flowers in the Attic. So this is a...
You find these obscure
I did
Lifetime
not find,
movies.
No.
Like, A Time for Clara or whatever.
No.
Like, by the way, one of the best Lifetime movies was Gina Gershon playing Donatella Versace. That was a fantastic Lifetime movie.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where the through line to that was, but okay, I got you. No.
Okay. Another one I have to say before we get into this. Another great Lifetime movie, and I think it was a Lifetime movie. Maybe ABC Family. It was Lifetime. Joan Rivers playing herself when her husband hung himself in the garage. And she's like sitting there rehearsing, like a few years after he dies, oh, Edgar, oh, Edgar. Like, that is fantastic. You want to talk about camp? That is fucking camp. Like, wow.
I just have to put it on the record. Flowers in the Attic was... It's a that was the first of a series of books written in the late 70s, early 80s. That was very, very, very popular at the time. Like, extremely popular. Probably among, single housewives who didn't have anything better to do. But they're very dark because they're classified as gothic novels. So this V.C. Andrews, I'm assuming, flaming faggot, he wrote this series of books that was very dark about a family. There's some death and stuff. But, I mean, it's just rife with incest. Like, these kids are, like, pushed into the attic, and they're like, this is where you're going to live forever now. And then they, like, fall in love with each other because that's all the people that they, interact with.
This is about the Biden family?
No. And the publisher was Simon & Schuster, which is, like, a conservative publishing company. Whoa, okay. But the point is... this was late 70s, early 80s series of books that was then made into films. The first film was 1987, excuse me. And then they made Lifetime adaptations, of the books starting in 2014. And so that's when I watched it and was like,
real
wait,
stars, you said.
Ellen Burstyn.
Heather Graham, Kiernan Shipka, like real ass stars were in this.
These are the most fucked up movies and or books that you ever want to deal with. So if you have, I think it's Apple TV Plus, go watch at least the first movie. There are 3 movies. Oh, they're like 5 books, but they're 3 movies.
How long are the movies?
Well, so that was the interesting thing. Each movie was at least 3 hours when it was aired on Lifetime. Wait, no, on Lifetime. But I just looked it up recently. The movie's only an hour and a half. So they put like an extra hour and a half of commercials, probably to pay for Ellen Burstyn.
Look, I will say this. Ellen Burstyn does not come cheap, okay?
What? Didn't she win an Academy Award? Maybe?
For this?
No, not for this, but in her career.
Let me look. Ellen Burstyn.
I thought she had.
Ellen.
She has a pretty illustrious career.
Academy Award. She's at least gotten a nomination, right? Oh, yeah, she won for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yeah, I thought she had won.
Wait, she's gotten 5 nominations as well. Requiem for a Dream, Resurrection, Same Time Next Year, The Exorcist, and then she got a supporting actress nomination for The Last Picture Show.
If you've never seen Requiem for a Dream, that's also a very good movie. It's fucked up, it's disturbing, but it's very good.
Martin Scorsese accepted her Oscar for the 1975 Academy Awards because she was doing a play that night. That's a bad bitch. She was on fucking Broadway.
Gay icon.
Ellen Burstyn.
But no, she's in this film, and she plays the evil grandmother, who's like the villainess of the series. But it is, it's easily 5 hours. 3 movies, 5 hours worth of just nothing but disgusting incest and filth.
Okay,
filth.
Speaking of incest,
what?
I was reading about Serge Gainsbourg. Apparently, with his daughter, there was like a song called like Lemon Incest or something like that, and there was a video, and she was like 13. There's a lot going on because Jane Birkin passed, rest in peace. This is Jane Birkin's daughter, but Charlotte Gainsbourg and Serge Gainsbourg had like an incest song, but he never actually touched her, but it was alluding to it. There's some fucked up shit happening. I was reading about this today on Twitter.
I was going to say, where did this come from? Because, Charlotte Gainsbourg is one of,
Your dear friends?
No, one of my favorite actresses because she was in those Lars von Trier films. Well, no, Melancholia was good. Go watch Melancholia.
Well, apparently there was a song called Lemon Incest with her dad.
Well,
I don't know what the fuck is happening. Apparently it was a very controversial song and video.
Those other films that she was in. Sorry, that she was in were...
You sound like Lana working in the Waffle House. Shit.
The films that she was in were quite graphic and nasty. Nasty.
I don't need that.
Because you know what Charlotte Gainsbourg did? She went and fucked herself.
You know what Lars von Trier should do? He should do a film with Hunter Biden. And then he can fuck himself.
Fuck himself?
Yeah.